You feel a reading slump coming on? What book are you going to pick up to stop it? I just can't believe I didn't know it was by her. And you just don't see that here. Yep, I need to finally read this book before the TV series comes out. When I went back to all the ratings, which there are a million of, hi friends and readers, again, another week, another reading vlog. But this week, we are what I'm just going to say is mood reading. Last week, I read The Will of the Many, and while I rated it a relatively good rating for myself, 3.5 stars, maybe even bump that up to a 3.75 stars if we're being picky, I could feel myself entering / maybe putting myself into a reading slump. I just was not in the mood for that book, and by not in the mood, fantasy, especially high fantasy or a little bit of science fiction with fantasy, is not a comfort genre of mine, and that was a really big book, over 600 pages. So making myself read it for that video, which was reading the lowest and highest rated books on my TBR, just wasn't the perfect scenario or the most atmospheric time to pick up that book. And I found myself being a little bit I found that I didn't want to keep picking up the book for enjoyment, and more so was kind of just picking it up to do that reading challenge. So this week I thought we are not going to do a challenge of some sort. We're just gonna pick up 2 books that I've been in the mood to read and are sort of comfort reads for me to avoid any sort of reading slump. The first book I'm picking up is a book that I've been really wanting to read by a favorite author of mine, Cara Bastone. And the second book is a book that I've been seeing all over the place in the sports romance world, and it will be the first book in a new hockey romance series, or new to me, not new in general, that I've been wanting to read for a while. So I'm in the mood to read these books. Let's go. It is Friday. It's like 6:19 p.m. I am so excited and ready for my weekend and what I am reading this week. For the first mood read, I mentioned I will be reading one of my favorite authors. And can you believe it? I've only read 2 of their books and I'm already calling them one of my favorite authors. That is Cara Bastone. I've also heard people pronounce it Cara Bastone. I've been saying Cara. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I could easily look that up as well. Cara Bastone has a big backlog. However, I've only read 2 of their books. When I look at the front of a book and it tells me all the books by this author, it looks like they have written at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books by now. But I started out with the first book by this author I read was Ready or Not. And yes, this is the author with the cutest book covers ever. And I happened upon an autographed copy of this by chance. I was visiting New York City and I went to the Ripped Bodice where I had this book in my TBR, and it's based out of Brooklyn, which is where the Ripped Bodice is. So I guess that's why they had a signed copy. The author is from the area. And I was so happy to snag this and then read it when I got back home. So I read this about a year ago now and rated it like a 4-star. I do wonder if I reread it now if I'd give it a 5-star or not, just because I love these books. Not sure, but for the trope that this is, I had a really good time. It was my introduction to reading tropes like this. So I picked it up last year for its springy cover and really enjoyed it, so I wanted to make sure that I put this author on my to watch list to read their new releases, having not known they had a backlog of other books as well. So this year, when I saw they had a new release, I think not that long ago, I just read this in a video a few weeks ago, I picked up their new release, No Matter What. Also, the cutest covers ever. No Matter What, again, another trope that I have read before and didn't quite love. So I was really nervous for it. It's a couple who is already married, going through some tough times. Picked this up and gave it a 5-star. Yep. a 5-star. I absolutely love this book and the characters in it. If you want to know my thoughts, go watch the video where I read this alongside of Haley Pham's debut. And then when I was doing my research for reading this book, I came across the third book, which is the book we're reading this week, and that is Promise Me Sunshine. I had Promise Me Sunshine on my TBR. So many people had been recommending this book off their TBRs because they really enjoyed it as emotional romance. And that whole time I was waiting for No Matter What to come out, I could have been reading Promise Me Sunshine. I had no clue it was by Cara Baston, and now I do, which is great because I got to delay my gratification by reading it now. So this will be book number 3 by this author I read. So we might go 3 for 3 for really loving their books. I just can't believe I didn't know it was by her. I just completely slipped over that fact. One thing that I really love about all 3 of these books, and what seems to be a trend with this author, is that all the books are based in New York and Brooklyn. Someone who is not from that side of town at all, I don't even live in that state. I have visited both Brooklyn and New York City multiple times though, and really have a fun time. We'll continue to go back. I love being able to imagine the city in my head, the landscape, where these people are going, and the types of people they're encountering. And I think that's so fun. I love that they're based there. I love reading books that are based there. So knowing what I know about all the high ratings that I've given the other 2 books, I'm kind of bringing that thought and, I don't know, pressure to this book, and I'm scared. I hate when I do that because you want each book to shine on its own. And so yes, Promise Me Sunshine. We are 136 pages in on chapter 13. So a little under halfway because this book is 368 pages, which is a good length. I would say most romances, which this is a romance, are around that length these days. Usually when books are over 400 pages, that's when it can get tricky. So I think that this is just a good length. While it is romance, I've heard people who recommend it say it's a very emotional romance, and that has a lot to do with what our main character is going through. And it came out in March of 2025, so I could have read this a whole year ago. It is now almost May 2026. This book is gonna find me at the time it finds me, which is now. And how did I miss this? I knew I should have been reading it when I picked up the book. My boyfriend was so nice to buy this for me because I had put it in my cart online, and he got it, and then it came in and I read that Jessica Joyce did a little blurb on the back, which Jessica Joyce also wrote one of my favorites, The X-Files. Gave this a 5-star, really enjoyed this one, and I thought, okay, this is a good sign. I'm gonna have a good time. And 130 something pages in, that is the case. For this story, we are following Linny. We know from the beginning that Linny's best friend has passed away. They passed on from cancer, and Linny is having a really hard time. They live together, so it's really hard to be at their apartment, their shared apartment, with this person no longer here. It's hard to show up for work. It's hard to be present in their life, and they're just quite frankly struggling with grief. Linny takes a job babysitting or nannying for a little kid, and this little kid's grumpy uncle is always hanging around the apartment. And when he, whose name is Miles, catches on to Linny's story and what is sort of plaguing her right now with all the grief she is trying to work through, he agrees to help her out because he too has recently gone through his own grief story. And so he has asked that Linny lean on him to get through this time, even though they're sort of in this temporary setup where she's babysitting his niece, but he doesn't have that great of a relationship with his niece, and that's because he just met her like 2 years ago. So that's all I'm gonna share about the summary. I am hoping that with this being a grumpy main character, that you are avoiding being grumpy and mean and just rude. And so far, Miles does not seem like a rude, grumpy person, just seems grumpy and has the best intentions for people around him, and they'll figure that out once they get to know him. So I'm excited. I'm gonna keep reading, and I'll update you probably when I'm done with this book, hoping we enjoy ourselves and take the pressure off, but hopefully it's a 4 or 5 star. I have just had the perfect Sunday morning. I woke up at like 8 o'clock and my hold for this book, Promise Me Sunshine, actually delivered on my Kindle. I had put a hold out at the e-library Libby, using Libby, and I put it on my Kindle, and I just laid in bed literally from 8 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. and read the whole second half of this book on my Kindle. And then I just recently got up to finish the last chapter, wanted to save it for the paperback, and I just had the best time ever. I was a little bit worried about just before the 50% mark, things were falling off for me. I wasn't feeling that 5-star feeling for Promise Me Sunshine like I had been with the other book by Cara Bastone, No Matter What. And of course, I was telling you, I didn't want to hold that pressure to this book, wanted to let it be its own book and its own experience for me, where I'm at and where it's at. But things had felt a little bit slow between our two characters, Lenny and Miles. In part that they come together in such a unique arrangement where he is the uncle of the kid she's babysitting, but he doesn't really know his niece all that well. And then he agrees to sort of help her through her grief, help her get through the day as complete strangers that know nothing about each other. And that part almost felt not real. Like I couldn't imagine where their relationship could progress from there. But 50% onward, so everything I read this morning was just chef's kiss. Getting to know Miles and getting to know Lenny as she worked through the grief of losing her best friend and being where her feet are now. It was just so good. I couldn't really put words to how I was feeling about Cara Bastone's male main characters, the MMC, because I think that's why I enjoy her books so much, is the way she writes those male main characters. When I pick a romance book up, a lot of times why I might not get the 4 or 5-star feeling is because of the male main character, honestly, and the communication and the third act conflict, and you just don't see that here, and that's why I love it. This is a 5-star. 5-star. So that means we've given the last 2 books by Cara Bastone a 5-star, and the first one I read over a year ago. I almost anticipated that if I reread it, it'd become a nostalgic 5-star for me as well. I don't know, maybe I should reread it now or sometime soon. But I was reading at the end of the book about Cara Bastone, and I think they perfectly summed up how I was feeling. I said her goal with her work is to find the swoon in ordinary love stories. To find the swoon in ordinary love stories. We are following characters that their lives feel real. They're going through real grief. They're going through real experiences. And I think that's exactly what you see in at least the 3 books that I've read. And then it also says that Cara Bastone is a fangirl of love stories featuring men who aren't hobbled by their own masculinity. And that is just the perfect way to describe Miles. Miles is like the perfect book boyfriend. He waited for her to get through her grief. Oh, I just love Miles. I love this book. And then when you look at the title, Promise Me Sunshine, I just love the feelings and how that wraps up the end of these 2 characters' stories. And I'll say it over and over again now that I've read these books. Being able to wrap up a story that feels satisfying without having an epilogue where everything changes a year or 2 years later for the characters is so nice for a reader, at least in my opinion. I love that we get to maybe have an unsatisfying ending for other people because you might want to see into the future of their lives, but I love ending it where we were with them and not fast forwarding to time that we weren't able to see and get to know them in. So all that to say, I'm a big fan when a book ends and doesn't need an epilogue to help me feel like I finished these character stories. I'm just holding this up. Love the cover. Love all of her covers. Man, I'm so glad I sat in bed and read that all morning. So if you have this book on your TBR, I say pick it up, get to know Lenny, get to know Miles, and see where it takes you. Now is Sunday and I still have plenty of reading left to do today, potentially. I actually started the week thinking that I was going to read a hockey romance series that I've been wanting to pick up for months now, but something came out on the internet, a trailer perhaps, that made me change my change my mind on what I wanted to pick up instead. We're picking up a different hockey romance series in preparation for a TV show coming out in the next few weeks. Any guesses? I'll talk to you later once I've started that book and I will let you know how we're feeling and thoughts. We are mood reading to prevent a pre-slump or to prevent a slump because I felt one coming on at the end of last week. And of course, we just read a 5-star in Promise Me Sunshine and feeling really good about not being in a book slump from that book. But now I'm wondering how I'm liking the second book we're reading. I originally was going to start the DC Stars Hockey Romance series. That's by Chelsea Curtis. But I completely did a 180 when the TV trailer came out for this next book. My coworkers told me about the trailer and then it came up on a YouTube ad. I watched the trailer and I thought, yep, I need to finally read this book before the TV series comes out this next month. And that book is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I'm reading it on Kindle Unlimited, which is a plus. I didn't have to purchase it in addition to my Kindle Unlimited subscription for the month. And I do think that the rest of the series is going to be on Kindle Unlimited as well. Now I'm looking at my phone because I wanted to say a few things. I put The Deal on my TBR back in March 2024. So it has officially now been over 2 years since this book was on my TBR. And the book on my TBR is what I think is the older cover, where it's an actual person on the cover. And I've seen in the wave of the last few years, these covers transition to be not real people in that they do like a graphic or cover art for like almost like cartoony but not cartoony, like the outline of people with no facial features and stuff. But I am recognizing this book from the old cover because that's the one that's on my TBR and on Goodreads. I also went to look up when this book came out because I think it's been quite some time, but it has had the new edit and the new revamp of the cover to be more trendy to the sports romance series we see come out in today's bookish world. This book came out in 2015 and I did watch the trailer and I was giddy about the TV show, so now we're reading this instead. And I believe that the TV show starts out in May, so we are approaching the end of April. It'll be no time and I wanted to read the book first. This will also be my first book by Elle Kennedy. I have not read an Elle Kennedy book despite what I know about this author in the sports romance world. I do think that they have a ton of series out there, and The Deal is book 1 in a 5-book series, and that's the off-campus series. So I think that the TV show is going to have multiple seasons, but the first season coming out is for the first book, The Deal. This book is about 333 pages on my Kindle, so a really good length like the first book we read this week. And so far it is very spicy, very open door romance in that it is based in college sports. It's been a while since I read a college-based book, and I am myself a few years out of college. The last book I read that dealt with college was Call It What You Want. Call It What You Want. I did that in a video reading popular song title books, and I did not have that good of a time based on personal preferences. And so I tend to pick up sports romance books these days that are professional sports, so MLB, NFL, NHL, and this one is college-based. So that is playing a part on how I'm feeling so far about the book. This book is dual point of view between Hannah and Garrett Graham. Hannah is going to this college called Briar, and she's pretty smart, and she aced a midterm that her counterpart Garrett did not ace, and so he has asked her to be his tutor so he can pass this midterm and continue playing hockey, because you have to have good grades to keep playing hockey. But Hannah wants nothing to do with tutoring him. She's busy, she has a life. She has turned Garrett down, except for Garrett comes prepared with sort of a deal, hence the title of the book, to get Hannah to tutor him, and that is he is going to allow Hannah to use him to make her crush jealous. She has a crush on this other guy who plays football actually, and he seems to never notice her, so she's going to use Garrett in the deal to get her crush to notice her. You can imagine where this is headed because I also am imagining where it's going to go. And the good news about me reading this now that the trailer is out, I'm imagining the characters and what they look like based off of the characters already announced in the trailer. Since I haven't finished this book and I don't know much about the Elle Kennedy fandom, I don't know if people were excited or let down by the cast of the TV show, had people fan casted other people, I try to stay level-headed about that or in the middle somewhere about fan casting so I don't get my hopes let down. But so far I'm just imagining those people, so that's been easy since I never pre-imagined someone else in my head. And that's it. The last update I'll give is that I am on chapter 14, which is 33% of the book. I'm gonna try and finish this and update you when I'm done. So far it's not screaming 4 or 5 star for me, unfortunately. Right now I'm finding our main character Garrett a bit abrasive, and the college atmosphere is not my favorite at the moment. I think I've exited that era of my reading preferences, but who knows? We still have 70% of the book basically to read, and I could change my mind on that, and Garrett could change my mind. We'll see. I have now finished The Deal by Elle Kennedy, and it took me about 2 days to finish the book. So I will preface by saying absolutely ran through this book. It's a very easy book to read, and it is definitely one of those books that I feel people would call a filler book if you need it in between some hard reads, longer reads, or you're just in the mood for sports college romance. And with that preface, I'm gonna give this book a 2.5 stars. I know it's so crazy. When I went back to all the ratings, which there are a million of, which is crazy, this book has been out for over 10 years now, and most of the people that I follow on Goodreads who have read and rated this book, a lot of their ratings were 3, 4, 5 years ago. And if they're anywhere similar to the age that I am, which I know a lot of the people I follow on there are, they likely read this book while they were beginning college, in college, just before college, and that makes more sense to me because I could have seen myself rating this a 4 star had I picked it up in college like I did books like Icebreaker. This read very similar to me in the way that they wrote the romance and the spice. Post-college Victoria didn't mind. I had an okay time reading it. It definitely didn't put me in a book slump, so that says a lot. So I do think that I achieved the goal this week in avoiding a book slump, especially since I started out with Promise Me Sunshine. And really a 2.5 star means for me that not necessarily that the book is bad, because I'd never say that about an author who is taking time to create, and it's something that I've never done, so I could not speak to in that sense, but more so it's not my personal preference today. I do think that the author told an important story with Hannah and Hannah's past and how it influences who she is today in college and how she interacts with the men in her life and her friends when it comes to common hobbies and common pastimes in college, like partying and drinking and being in relationships. That is something I really hope that they explore in the TV show. Based off the trailer so far, the TV show does seem to be very spicy and intimate, like Hannah's relationship in the story, but I do want to see that other side of Hannah and how impactful that was to her story in the TV show. I'm wondering if it will be a heavy plot line or not. With that being said, there are some triggers for this story that you might want to look up before you start reading it if you haven't already. And then I will say I went back and saw that now cover, at least on my Kindle, is the TV series cover. So this book has gone through a few renditions of the cover. You have the basic, I guess the original one with the real life person on it, the graphic or the illustrated version of that, and now the picture of the two people who will be playing Hannah and Garrett in the TV show cover. And the big question I asked myself at the end of this is, do I want to continue reading? Because I definitely know where it's headed with some of the characters we got to meet on the hockey team, and this being a 5-book series. At this time, I don't think I'm going to move forward with the rest of the off-campus series. That might change this time next year if season 2 of the TV show is out. I really liked it and really want to read it before the new season comes out. Who knows, maybe I'll revisit it then, but for now I don't think I'm going to add the rest to my TBR. That pretty much wraps up the reading week. I am so glad that I decided to mood read and got a book off my TBR that I was highly anticipating, and then another one that's been on there for years. And I think that's all. Bye for now.